Hey folks, how you doing? Welcome. I thought I would take this time out to speak a little bit about character. The things that we do, the things that we say, and the process of monitoring and editing as we go. Something that's I'm constantly dealing with myself, and I usually fall short most of the time. Okay? But when it comes to actually speaking in public, which I'm familiar with, you have to truly define the terms that you're using, because if you don't, others will define it for you. And their interpretation of what you're saying, my experience has been a lot of the time as not being what I meant. Or perhaps you may say something in public and you're not aware, that's usually the case, of how people is going to respond to what you're saying. You have your intention of what you're doing, but somebody may be listening in the audience that hears one word in a particular context. Most of the cases that I've ran into has been that being out of context to what you're actually saying. But they'll just latch onto that, and next thing you know, I'm getting like this evil eye from the audience, So I just, long story short is that, number one, you have to define with what you're saying. You have to be sensitive to those who are on the receiving end of things. You have to make sure that with what you're saying is actually being a benefit and it's being received in that way. I mean, if that's what your goal is, my goal for me personally would be for the benefit of all life. And what I have to offer is to encourage that so that we work together co-creatively towards a mutual effort. So that's the audience that I'm directing myself towards, because that's my intention. That may not fit into all the categories for this is not a generalization. I'm obviously being very specific. Now, in regard to character trait, there are those that are online that I've heard that I was very interested in what they were saying and interested in what they were doing, because I seen the potential of that in respect to the benefit of all life and, bringing forth spiritual healing. And it was along the lines as far as what I've been working towards and learning and looking to apply to myself as well as to share with others. And then I listened long enough. That's usually how the case is. You listen long enough, you start to hear other things too. And in this case, what I'm referring to is the not developed aspect of character that should be there for those who are in a position of leadership. They start talking about other people. And people, I'll be very specific. I won't name names, but I'll name one name, Ashiana Dean, where I've heard criticism towards her that I believe to be unfounded. And even if it was true, which there was no evidence being brought forth as it being true, it was just someone making pronouncements, saying certain things without any evidence to support it. Number one, in this situation is, number one, they do not need to be talking about this in public. The public cannot understand the context of that because they weren't there. It wasn't personal to them. They have no idea. All they know is what you're saying. And if you have followers, they're going to believe what you're saying. The majority will believe what you're saying. For me, that's gossip. And that is not an example of maturity. That is a poor character trait, undeveloped, in my opinion. And I think I have a valid position by having such a strong opinion towards that. So it's extremely important to keep things under the waterline. You don't need to be talking about everything, especially within areas that deals with other people. And I've seen this over and over again where people have gone online and they have called other people liars and never ever spoke to that person that they're calling a liar in person. They never contacted them. They never asked them questions. They never did the proper way of doing things, which I would consider, if you're a male, that's a gentleman way of doing things. That's just a given. If you're a gentleman, if you're not, then, you have a character trait that is flawed. And I see a lot of that. People that are doing that are saying these things in public about people that they don't need to be talking about, especially if it has to do with their own personal experience that has nothing to do with the public, but has everything to do with the person that they have the so-called issue with, will resolve it with them. That's what you're supposed to do. And if you can't, forgive and let it go. That's the Christic thing to do. That's just a given, easy response for anybody who's been on this path long enough, knows that's how you deal with it. That is a sign of maturation. And yet I see people up there in age, they're behaving like children throwing stones at one another. That just doesn't fly. It really doesn't. Now, let me speak on behalf of Ashiana. Now, the messenger and the message for me is two different things. I learned this a long time ago. You separate the messenger from the message. Now, I understand this world. I understand it's very difficult to live in. Sometimes it's extremely difficult to live in. Sometimes it's beyond description of the things that it's endured here, especially for those who are trying to make change and they have actually substance that does bring forth true change and understanding. This world is complicated because it's been made to be complicated, because there's agendas behind all that, and it's not about humankind. Humankind is just being used. There's much more involved in all this. So I look at people like Ashiana, which is very few and far in between, who become a vessel of honor, and many lifetimes leading into the position to be able to hold this information and receive these translations in order to communicate the truth. And I honor that. I don't care what she did in her past. I'm aware of things. It's none of my business to say anything about it, period. I lived in this world long enough. It's shitty. It's been extremely difficult for me. And be it far from me to say anything about anybody, other than not to gossip about others. So I respect her and honor her. Regardless of what happened, that's none of my business. I honor her. And I honor the message, and I separate the two. The messenger is never perfect, cannot be perfect. The intention can always be perfect, and that's all you need. It's not about what you do, what you can't do. It's really difficult. I keep emphasizing that. Everybody knows that, the sound of my voice. If you don't know that now, you will know it. So I honor her, and for anybody to disrespect that, they're disrespecting themselves when they do that. And they should not be in a position of leadership. Not until they adjust that. And they need to make an apology. And those who know of what I'm referring to and who I'm referring to, which I'm not mentioning, will not name, you know who I'm talking about. It needs to come to an end. It's creating damage. Please stop. That being said, I would like to add this. If you wish to participate and join within the, Cheilontic Morphogenic Science groups, my particular group that I put together started, which is called the Freedom Teachings, there is protocol behind that. It's not about going in there and taking materials and running with it. Stop. It's about respecting what's there and what's being done. If we're co-creating, if you have people that are being of service to others, such as yourself, then if you're like-minded, and if you're not like-minded, you need to adjust the way that you're thinking. Otherwise, why are you attracted to wanting to be involved with these groups to know the truth? You need to, in turn around and co-create with that and respect that. First, co-creating with those who share with you. With discretion, you share with others. With discretion, you share with others. Don't grab the materials and run with it. Please don't do that. It's not doing anything. That's another expression of self-service. Readjust the way that you think about this. Readjust what you do. Take your time. But you know that's true. All right. So that being said, I'll leave some links within the description. If you want to go check some things out, there it is. Peace, love, blessings, all that good stuff. Butterflies, rainbows, burping, belching, farting. Have at it. All right. Peace.